Hi, welcome back. In this exercise, we're going to make our layout responsive. So let's start off by opening up Terminal. And I'm going to navigate into the folder for my Exceptional Realty project. And we'll go ahead and call Get Status. Everything's all good. And I'll check out my branches here. And I think I'm going to make a new branch. And we're going to call this one Responsive Design. Okay. And then let's go ahead and bring this up in Sublime Text. Okay, I'll go ahead and close out these guys right here. And I'm on the index page here. And the first thing I want to do is I want to create a meta tag here to handle the viewport settings. So let's go ahead and create a meta tag. And let's give this guy a name. And we'll set it to viewport. And then we'll set the content attribute. And here we're going to set this so that the width of the screen will be determined by the device width. Okay, and then we'll do a comma, and to prevent scaling on the device, we're going to say initial-scale equals 1.0, comma, and then we'll also set the minimum scale equal to 1.0. And then we'll also, of course, set the maximum scale equal to 1.0. So here, all devices that connect to this website will have their scaling disabled because initially it's going to load the page at 1.0, which is the default. And because minimum and maximum are also set to 1, then it's going to be they're going to be unable to scale. And it's going to set the width equal to the width of their device. So this will help our media queries kick in and do their thing. So to stay nice and organized, I'm going to add another style sheet here as well. So I'm going to go and add another link here to a separate style sheet that I'll use. And we'll put this in the CSS folder here, and we will call it responsive.css. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this onto each of the pages. So first I'll go through and I'll add the viewport. So we'll go to the contact page here. We'll paste in the viewport. Market reports, paste in the viewport. New properties, paste in the viewport. Real estate listings, paste in the viewport. Cool. And then let's go ahead and start pasting in the link to our responsive.css. That way it will affect all of our pages. So I'm going to put it after my style sheet here. That way it will adopt the default styles initially, and then it will alter them. Okay. All right, perfect. So I've added that to each of the pages. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this index page here up in the browser. Cool. And you can see I did a few things. I decided to shade the edges of this wood here in Photoshop to make the social icons pop a bit more. I also moved the logo was in this picture, and I thought it looked a little dirty, a little bulky there, so I moved the logo here to the upper left-hand corner and I changed the font. So you can go ahead and check out the CSS code for that. And it was done just doing things that we've already learned in the past. And on the other pages here, I threw in some additional images. And here I've styled the table. And I went ahead and styled the form. So again, feel free to check out the CSS code for that. All right. So now we're ready to go. Let's go ahead and bring up the CSS file we're going to be working in. So in the CSS folder, I'd like to create a new file. So I'm going to jump back to terminal and I'm going to do change directory CSS. And here we're going to do touch to create a new file. And we did call this responsive.css. Okay. Change directory ... to get back to my folder. Okay. And then now we can see the responsive.css here. I'm going to go ahead and open up that file. So this is just a blank slate. And I'm going to jump back to the browser. And what I want to do is I want to have the size of the device, in this case the size of my browser window, as it scales down. I'm going to make changes as soon as the content starts to look awkward. Okay. And instead of, putting in a specific size, like saying like, oh, 1080 is the width of a tablet or something like that, I'm just going to wait until I'm scaling the browser in and I see something troublesome that doesn't look quite right, and then I'm going to create a media query for that. Okay, and that's going to give us the best results in terms of having our site look good everywhere. So here the content is going to determine my breakpoints. Okay, so one really easy way to see the measurements or the sizing is to bring up your developer tools. Okay, and I'm not so concerned right now about the elements or the styles here, so I'm going to go ahead and hover over the top of the bar and pull it downward. But I am going to leave it open because you'll notice that when I grab the corner of the browser here and I click and drag, in the upper right hand corner of the browser you're able to see the measurements there. And the measurement I care about right now is the first measurement, which is the width. Okay. So I'm just going to start dragging inward, and we're going to see when our layout starts to break, and then we'll write some nifty media queries to fix it. So it looks like the social icons here are starting to get rather close. Let's see what happens when we get even closer. So it looks like they'll start to overlap onto the image, and we don't want that. So let's see about at what point that starts to happen. So here it seems like around 11:08 is really about as close as I want them to get. Okay, so this is going to be our first media query, and we'll write it for a breakpoint of 11:08 pixels wide. Okay. So I'm going to come back here and we'll just go ahead and say @media, which is how we start all media queries. And then we're going to set this for only screen. And in parentheses here, we're going to say a maximum width of 11:08 pixels. Okay. And then nested inside of here, we can write all of the styles then that we want to kick in. So what I was noticing is that these guys are getting a little close, so I'm going to have to move them somewhere else. Okay. And also I'm getting quite close to my wrapper here. Eventually I'm going to hit my wrapper and I'm going to need to use my scroll bar to scroll back and forth to see the content. And I don't want my content to get chopped off like that. So I'm going to have to go ahead and address that here. So first I'm going to tell the wrapper to no longer be fixed. Let's just go ahead and set the wrapper to have a fluid width. So we'll set this to 90%. That way it has 10% available. That'll be 5% on each side. Okay. And then we also want to select the social box there. So the social div is the one that has the social icons inside of it, and I no longer want that to be position fixed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this one to position absolute instead, and we'll go ahead and tell it to be 82 pixels from the top and 4 pixels from the right. So when I was actually doing this earlier, so I know like the numbers that work, but what I had to do was, like go into the dev tools and adjust the amounts until I got the number just right. But 82 is kind of like the sweet spot. You'll see what I mean. Okay, and then we're going to set the width here to auto, like that, so it can be wider. And instead of having them vertically, I think I'll make the links that are inside of there. I think I'm going to make them display inline block instead so that they can appear side by side. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save that, and we'll just drag this over until we hit 1108. Bam. Okay, cool. So did you see that? What happens is when we hit 1108, the social bar here jumps up to the top. So now the icons are up here in this available empty space. And because they're positioned absolute, when I scroll down now, they're actually going to scroll out of view because there's no longer really any space for them over here. And since I set the wrapper at 90, what's going to happen is as I scale the site down now, all of the content is going to be affected like this. Okay. Cool. And one of the other things you can see I've done here is I've set the columns here to have a column count of 3. Okay, and we're going to be able to adjust that as we scale the site in. Next, we want to see what else breaks in the layout. This is working out pretty good, but as we go below 1108 pixels, surely other things are going to give us problems. So let's go ahead and jump back to the browser and scale inward. So I'll come up here so I can see everything nice and clear. All right, so far so good. Well, everything's looking pretty good here for now. It's always good to scan up and down the page to see how everything's doing. Everything looks pretty decent still. All right, so right here, the text in my navigation is getting a little too close to the edges. And I kind of feel like as the images get smaller, I think this text could be a little smaller as well. Like overall, I feel like all the text on the site could be slightly smaller when this gets down to like a tablet size. So I'm going to go ahead and make another breakpoint. I think that around 900 pixels will be a good place. Okay, so again, we'll make another media query here. We'll say @media, and we'll say only screen and max dash width, and we'll set this guy to 900 pixels, our next breakpoint. All right. So here what I can do very easily is I can set the body and change its font size to make all of the font size in this whole site go down. So I'm going to set it to 85% to make all the fonts smaller. Okay. So if I refresh that, you'll see that the text will get a little bit smaller here. Right there. Okay, cool. So here it goes from 100 to 85, which gives us more space on each side, and it also makes this text a little smaller, which for me looks a little more correct in proportion to the content now. So one of the other things I'm noticing now is that the logo itself is a little large now in relationship to the text up here. So I think I'm going to scale this logo down a little bit. All right. And then as I scale this logo down, I think I'm also going to reposition the social bar, because when the text here gets smaller, it's going to make this a little bit narrower. So we'll go ahead and reposition this as well. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and select the H1 inside the logo. And this guy currently, if I check out the style.css and we scroll down to the logo, we can see the current style. Okay, so here I have the logo H1 is actually hiding the text, right? But I have a background image in here, which is the this little PNG file, this little E, and then this part is the H2 now. Okay, so I have this set to 45 pixels by 45 pixels, and we're gonna go ahead and make it a little bit smaller. So we'll set this one to be 10 pixels smaller. We'll set it to 35 pixels, and we'll set the height also to 35 pixels since this is a perfect square image here. Okay, and let's also make the text a bit smaller on the H2. So I'm going to set the font size of this text down to 2.2 em. Okay. All right, and we'll refresh that. Okay, so this guy got 10 pixels smaller. So again, this is what I was talking about before. The social icons now need to be shifted up a tiny bit so that they align with this. Okay, so we'll go ahead and tell the social bar then, about 72 pixels from the top. Okay, so that just jumped this up a little bit. Okay, great. So again, let's scale out and see the change here. Okay, so on the right hand side, my social icons are on the side. They're position fixed, so when I scroll they move, right? But then when I scale in, the wrapper turns to 90 and my social icons become absolutely positioned in display blocks, so they're side by side and up here now. And you'll also notice that when we get down even smaller here, that they will move upward and we'll get a little more space here. For the logo panel is shrinking a tiny bit, and this text is also shrinking proportionally here. Okay, so that's going to look a little bit better for tablets. All right, awesome. What else needs fixed? So here we're at 850. Okay. And as we're getting close to 800, same thing again, market report doesn't have much space on the sides. So I think I could even go a bit smaller here on the text here inside of this navigation bar. Media only screen. And this time we'll do a max dash width of 800 pixels. Okay. And here I just want to adjust those nav bars so that those are the links that are inside of the nav that are inside of navbar. And what we want to do then is we want to give them a font dash size of 0.9 em. So we'll just take them down a tiny bit. Okay, let's go ahead and see what that did there. Okay, that's better. So these have gotten a bit smaller. And they're getting small enough now that, I'm going to have to come up with another strategy for the navigation here pretty soon, I think. Okay, so let's go down and scan everything here. All right, so these columns, these paragraph columns here are starting to get pretty narrow. I don't like that. I'm only reading 3 to 4 words on a line before I have to skip to the next line. And the same thing's happening here with my actual sections here, these actual physical column sections, as well as the paragraph column count. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take care of this column count here. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to go into one of my previous media queries. Like right off the bat, when we go down to about 900 pixels, like right around here, I feel like when the text gets smaller here at 900, that this is too narrow for the column count in the paragraph. Yeah. So let's go ahead and go back into the 900. And this is one of the nice things about media queries. They're very flexible. So the way I can select those is these are all the paragraphs inside of the column 3. And just to show you what the actual original style was really quick, I'm going to go into style.css and we'll come down to the layout here, and you can see that here, dot column 3 space P, so all the paragraphs that occur inside of the 3 column, or in other words, these ones that stretch 3 columns across, right? So here I have a column rule set, which is the vertical line. I also have a column gap, which is some spacing in between the columns. And then here I have the column count. So the column count is actually set to 3, and that's why we're seeing the 3 here. Okay, so under 900 pixels, what I want to do is I want to set this down to 2 instead. So I'm going to go back here under 900, and we'll go ahead and say, instead of 3, we'll set you down to 2. Okay. Let's try that one out first. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so again, here we have enough space for the 3 columns. Here, when I drag this in, this guy switches to 2 before it gets too close together there. Now, we still have the issue with this guy though, because when I get down here below like 750-ish, this is fine, but this guy's still too narrow. So I actually have to adjust my actual sections that are built into column structure here. So let's go ahead and create another new media query. Okay, so we'll go ahead and say at media only for screen and max dash width, and we'll say 750 pixels. Okay. And what we want to do here is now readjust our actual column structure. So we'll do column dash 1, column dash 2, and column dash 3. All right. And I no longer want these to, take up only, 2/3 or 1/3. So I'm going to set the width of these to 100%. And that's going to help them stack vertically. So to destroy the column structure, we'll stack them vertically, which means we can also get rid of the margin on the left-hand side. We'll just set that to 0. Okay. Let's see what else. And then we also want to set them to float none. That way they're no longer floating. Okay. So all the columns here, 100%, no margin, float none. Okay, so let's save that, come back to the browser and refresh. Okay, so we'll go down here, and nice, when we get down and this column starts to get too narrow, now we're down to 1 column, so company news is now below this. So when the device gets smaller here, we'll just go to a single column structure. It's going to be a lot better. All right. And here I had, this looks like a bit of a mess. So this is the details section, which I had given a height to, and it has this border on the side. So we're definitely going to have to fix that here as well. So it's always good to scan up and down the page. So let's remove the border class. So they have a class of border right, which has a border on the bottom. Easy way to control this is all we have to do is set the border to 0. And that will remove the border on the side. Okay, so now the border is gone, but the height is still an issue here. So what I can do is I can select those columns there. Those are inside the details section, and they're actually divs. So I'll set those div elements inside details here to have a height of auto instead. Okay, and that should just get as tall as the content there. And we'll also add some padding on the bottom so there's a tiny bit of space in between them. Like that. Let's go ahead and try that out. So refresh. Okay, that's much better. So now the details section is displaying these vertically. I removed the little border on the side, and they're now stacking vertically like this. It looks pretty good. All right, so we'll just make sure everything's all well up here. Okay, cool. So at this point, from here down, we're going to run into the issue where these columns are going to get too narrow again. So it's 750, we might as well set that column count down lower again. So I'll just copy this from the previous media query up here. And we'll just throw it in here. We'll stick it in here in the 750 breakpoint, and we'll set this guy to 1. So columns are back to their default. So paragraphs are just going to be 1 column across. Okay, and that's a lot more readable. Okay, so then if we scale up, we can see this will go to 2, and then to 3, like that. And then as we scale down, these guys will eventually jump one on top of the other like that. Boop. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and scale down some more. So we were at 750 there. All right, so as we scale down further, what's happening is the navigation bar is just too small for me to bear now. These guys are getting really little. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very common strategy, which is when you get onto a smaller mobile device, you don't want the navigation to look like this, right? Where you have market on top of report and new on top of properties. They're just getting all jumbled up there. So what we can do is we can use a common strategy, which is to create a little menu bar icon so we can hide all of these links here and we can show a little menu bar icon. Okay, so what I went ahead and did, and this is already in the code for you, I went ahead and added an additional link inside the navigation on all the pages here. And this guy here has an ASCII character in it, which is just 3 lines. They call it the hamburger menu icon. Hamburger because it looks like kind of like the hamburger with the bun on the top and bottom. Okay, just to show you what I mean before we demonstrate it, if I go to another site here, for example, let's go to Get Bootstrap. You'll notice when we start to scale down, as we run out of space here with the nav bar at the top, the nav bar will turn into this little symbol here, okay, which is indicating that a menu can pop out here. Okay, so we're going to use JavaScript a bit later on to make this animation where the menu bar pops out. But for now, what we'll do is we'll just simply hide the navigation and show this little like hamburger icon here. That means that there's a drop menu. Okay, so again, what I did was I created this link here with a class of menu icon, and I put that little ASCII symbol here, which will display as a hamburger icon. Okay. And then what I did was in the CSS here, so here in the navbar section, down here in the bottom, I did create this menu icon class attached to this link. And here I'm setting it to display none. So initially, we're not seeing it. If I come back here, you're not seeing that icon, right? But what I want to do is I want to hide all of these navbar icons, and I want to show just the menu bar icon here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to tell all of these ones to hide, all of these other links in the nav bar to display none, so they'll disappear. And then we're going to set this guy here to display block, so we'll actually see it appear. So back to the responsive.css. So we'll go ahead and make a new media query here. And this one we're going to set to 700 pixels. Okay, and inside of this one, we'll go ahead and select all the navbar links and hide them. So we'll say navbar space nav space A, and we'll set them to display : none. Okay, and that's going to hide all of those links. The next thing we want to do is select that last link that's in there. And that's the one that has the class of menu icon. And then we'll set this guy, who, remember, is currently set to display none, but we're going to set it to display block. and we're going to set it to float right, so it will be on the right hand side. And we'll go ahead and set the font size to 1.5 ems, and we'll give it some padding. We'll say 10 pixels on the top and bottom and 20 pixels on the left and right. And we'll set the width to auto. So let's go ahead and come back here and refresh. So as we scale down, when we get down to 700, bam. So there, all the icons are disappearing, and then we're going to see this icon here, which is going to, when we click it, we're going to add some JavaScript later on that's going to make a drop menu appear with all of our navigation inside of it. But so right now, when we go larger, we have new properties, listings, market report, contact, and the HUD link. And then again, when we go down past 700, it's going to turn into our menu bar icon here. Okay, so we're also going to set the logo panel to have a bit less space above it. So we'll go ahead in here and set the padding to 60 pixels on the top instead of previously it was like 80 something. So we'll take off like 20 pixels above the top there, and we'll set it to 0, 0 on the other sides. And then same thing with the social icon. We're going to move it down from the top now. So we'll make it a bit closer. We'll say 60 pixels. And we'll slim that up there. Okay. So that's getting a little bit smaller. So here when the text gets larger, we'll make this a bit thicker, but then when we scale down, that'll pop in like that. Okay, so here when we get down to about 495 pixels, the logo icons here are getting quite close to the company name here. So I think what I'm going to do is add one last media query. And we'll go ahead and set this guy to 495. We'll go ahead and select the H2 inside of the logo, and we'll just set the visibility to hidden. Like that, and then it won't get in the way. So we'll just hide it like that. So now it's very clean here. We'll have an icon for the menu on mobile devices. We'll have the logo of the company here, and then we'll have our social icons. And all of the content then is in a single column structure. Okay. So this can get very small, and it still looks good. Okay. And then if we come back out, open up like that, all is well. Okay. Let's check out some of the other pages. So we'll come down here. Okay. That's working out. All right. Then we have the listings. Okay, so now the listings are large like that from mobile. Cool. We'll study market report. So this guy has a table in it, and the table is going to scale down like so. Okay. And on the contact page, we have the form and the map. All right, so on smaller screens, it's just going to go to one column like this. All right, that's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with this for now. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and stage and commit my files. Okay, so we'll go ahead and say git add, git commit, and we're going to go ahead and tell this guy add responsive layout, and we'll do git push -u origin, and then the branch name, which is responsive design. Cool. And we'll check out master, and we will merge responsive design into it, and we can do git push origin master to throw up that code.